A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Hey, as we do on a Thursday around this time, let's check in with Andrew McColl, Family Voice Australia Queensland State Director. Hey Andrew, a special welcome back to 2020.
Good morning, Neil, and good morning, listeners.
Hey Andrew, we want to talk fathers today, but let's start with what is, I guess, a new development that might be coming for the state of Queensland, where the Katter Party is bringing a bill to the Parliament that's calling for this, what we know it as castle law. The idea of being able to defend your property if there's a sort of a home invasion. What do you understand about what's happening?
Well, this is good opinion because the Katter Australia Party are planning a bill to the Queensland Parliament under the law. Now, this refers to the equal. We know that a man's saying anyone should be permitted to legally protect their home and family if they are threatened by intruders. Now, the law presently as it is means that anyone who uses force to do this can find themselves in serious trouble. Now, the castle law legislation is designed to protect the innocent person and represents, in my view, a valid and a necessary change to Queensland law. Now, there is a petition in favour of the bill in the Queensland Parliament that now has some 56,000 signatures, and that's rising. This is huge. Now, if listeners sign this petition, it will add pressure on parliamentarians to support this legislation so that the innocent, law-abiding person is protected from criminal actions. How can they do this? Well, if you want to Google Queensland Parliament e-petitions, then just scroll down to the seventh one listed, which is simply castle law. You click on that and you can sign the petition and away we go. And that just means that, hey, the law-abiding person is given a further protection under law if they actually hit someone over the head or whatever they have to do to protect themselves and their family from some assailant, some intruder, some burglar.
Youth crime has been on the agenda, and I think there's been a little bit of good news these past few days, even in Queensland, as some of the statistics have come through, and the Queensland Premier's been, saying, hey, came to office and promised that I was going to deal with these things, and there's a little bit of a decrease. But when we've got things like home invasions, we keep talking about youth crime and the thought of the way that a home invasion may actually be met with a little bit of resistance. There's always been this sort of grey area around defending your own property. So this looks like it might well cause a big debate and give some level of empowerment around the thought of defending your property. I think, you're seeing this obviously as a good thing, Andrew.
I am. Yes, definitely seeing as a good thing because we do have a problem in Queensland today with crime, with youth crime, with violent crime. So if the innocent person is in his home and, hey, he might be in bed in the middle of the night and someone's trying to break in through a window or a front door, he says, man, what am I going to do now? Well, he needs to be able to lay hands on something to probably use if he wants to. And if that assailant comes off second best from that little encounter, the law, in my view, should protect the innocent person who's not breaking the law. He's simply protecting himself and his family from a home invasion. I think that's a perfectly good thing to do.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of debate around, appropriate force. And, if these sorts of things come to the courts, there'll be all sorts of controversies around it. But, an interesting debate ahead of us, perhaps for people who are looking on from all over Australia on things that might be developing in the state of Queensland. Hey, I don't know whether this is a bit of a segue to what we want to talk about with fathers, because, the person who perhaps is most likely to be looking to defend their home in some sort of rigorous way, maybe dad who's thinking, I've got some kids in the other bedroom there, we've got a home invasion on, what am I supposed to do? I guess it's good to have a man about the house and a father who loves his family and his wife. Let's talk fatherhood here, because you've been doing you could say we're in the middle of a series here around dads, fathers, and fathers especially who lead. Where would you like to kick off with this one today, Andrew?
Well, what we do know, Neil, is that every responsibility that a Christian has requires God's grace to bring it about. And being a godly father is no different. We can identify something of a father's responsibility from when God said concerning Abraham in Genesis 18, verses 17 to 19, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. For I have chosen him so that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him." So we learn from this that education and discipleship, according to the Bible, are really one and the same thing. In fact, it was Noah Webster about 200 years ago who commented that education without the Bible is useless. So when children spend lots of time with their parents, as opposed to their peers, it's the parents who do the influencing. This will have long-term implications. In 1 Kings chapter 12, after Solomon died and Rehoboam, his son, became king, it was the young men around him, his peers, who influenced him the most. Yes, he sought advice from the older generation, but he took no notice of it. Now, the consequences for him, they were a disaster.
Hey, I guess it'd be nice to be able to download Good Fatherhood or, order it online and it arrives with an Uber. But I imagine that there's a lot of things that, when we talk about a lifelong raising of our families, I guess time is essential here. What are your thoughts around the fact that this is a pursuit that you've got to sort of check into as soon as you've got the youngest family and maybe you never let go?
Well, it's going to take some time. It just is a matter that takes our time. And the question, Neil, is will we take the time with our children to do the influencing? Children know if they are important to us through how much time we're willing to spend with them and through giving them our attention. There's a well-known poem written about 50 years ago, Neil, called The Cat's in the Cradle. Actually, it's a song. It goes like this. "My child arrived just the other day. He came into the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and there were bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away. And he was talking before I knew it. And as he grew, he'd say, 'I'm going to be like you, Dad. I'm going to be like you.' And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon and little boy blue and the man in the moon. 'When are you coming home, Dad? I don't know when. We'll get together then, son. We'll have a good time then.' Well, my son turned 10 just the other day. Said, 'Thanks for the ball, Dad. Come on and let's play. Can you teach me to throw?' I said, 'Not today. I got a lot to do.' He said, 'That's okay.' And he walked away, but his smile never dimmed. Said, 'I'm going to be like him. Yeah. I'm going to be like him.' And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. 'When you coming home, Dad?' And I said, 'I don't know when. We'll get together then, son. We'll have a good time then.' Well, he came home from college just the other day, so much like a man, I just had to say. I said, 'I'm proud of you. Can you sit for a while?' He shook his head and he said with a smile, 'What I'd really like, Dad, is to borrow the car keys. See you later. Can I have them, please?' And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. 'When you coming home, son?' 'I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. We're going to have a good time then.' Well, I've long since retired and my son's moved away. Called him up just the other day. I said, 'I'd like to see you if you don't mind.' He said, 'I'd love to, Dad, if I could find the time. You see, my new job's a hassle and the kid's got the flu. But it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. It's been sure nice talking to you.' And as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. Yeah, and the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man in the moon. 'When you coming home, son?' 'Don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. We're going to have a good time then.' Unquote. But it hasn't got to be that way. In fact, it can be a whole lot different. Here's another brief, just a 4-line poem which conveys something a little better. Some folks have castles on the banks of the Rhine, or go to the orchestra each evening at 9. But richer than they, I always will be, because I had a dad who spent time with me.
You know, we could have played the song. You know, that was when you read the words from the song lyrics, some listeners will remember, it was Harry Chapin back in the 1970s, and then there was a re-release of that from Ugly Kid Joe, and so whatever version you might be remembering most, The Cat's in the Cradle and The Silver Spoon, the message in that is so timeless, Andrew, because fathers are always going to be important, and there's a message in there. If you don't take the time, then your children will turn out to be just like you. And there's a challenge there for every one of us, isn't there? But as a parent, you've got to be that influence on your children.
Absolutely, and it's got to be a steadying influence, because we want to see our children move from being children not only in body but in mind, working towards maturity or adulthood. In many places, the Bible typifies people as being like trees or plants. Psalm 1 tells us that he shall be like a tree. Psalm 144 verse 12 says, let our sons in their youth be as grown-up plants. Some plants, just like tomatoes, will fall over if they're not tied to a stake in the ground. And children need their parents to be around and serve them in that way, so that they have the time to find their feet securely in the Lord in this life. Yes, we won't be there forever, but we should be there for a while. And passages like Deuteronomy chapter 6 help us to see how to do this, so that we can be influencing our children when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. So these passages show us something. Hey, look, there's nothing new under the sun. They imply the need for a close family unit and a life shared together.
You know, it's all very well, isn't it, reflecting on biblical passages. Let us in on a few personal things here, Andrew. How do you reflect on your own relationship with your father? Do you have a story around that?
Well, I do. I have got a couple of them. I grew up on our family farm, and so we had the sheep and the wheat and the cattle and tractors and trucks and those kinds of things, as a lot of farms do. And I remember my dad picking me up. I was in year 6 at school. He came after school in our farm truck, and we went off together to buy a stud bull. I listened to him while he negotiated with the owners, and they settled on what they classified as 3.5, which meant 350 guineas at that time, which was between $12,000 and $15,000 today.
You're showing your age
Mr. Bull
here.
came home with us. Quite a bit of money. Yeah. And then Dad would announce over breakfast that a job needed to be done on the farm. And I asked who might be doing this. He'd sometimes say, me and thee, meaning he had a plan to do something with me. So when I was 13 and Test cricket was on in Sydney and Australia was playing the West Indies, he took me along. We watched Doug Walters make 224 and Bill Lawry got 151 against bowlers like Wes Hall and Gary Sobers. My dad seemed to value his relationship with me. The next year, he suddenly died from a heart attack, aged just 52.
A little too young, isn't it? And, reflecting on, working together side by side, children with their father. And it's not all just fun things. It's not all just going to the cricket. It's actually doing life together, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But it seems like we're in the midst of fatherhood. Our kids grow up quickly and too quickly, and we haven't got as much time as we thought we did have. But you've got to make the most of every opportunity, haven't you? How do we draw some loose ends together? Almost out of time. What are your thoughts around kids growing up quickly?
Well, fathers must remember that the clock's always ticking on their relationship with their children. Yes, he has investment opportunities, but he also has time limits. So week by week, he ought to be capitalising on those opportunities he has for being with them, taking an interest in them and their education, and engaging in lots of things with them. Work, games, conversation, everything that relates to their discipleship for the future. And this is the third part of a series of about 10. So we've got some more ground to cover yet, but many years later, our children will remember this, both the subject of the conversations and the time and the attitude they saw in Dad and in Mum. And if you are a godly father, they'll appreciate it.
Well, it's nice talking about fathers, and in that special context, not bumbling dad, but fathers that lead. And Andrew McColl, Family Voice Australia State Director for Queensland, I'll point listeners to familyvoice.org.au. Bunch of books that you've written there as well, if people were connecting with you. But Andrew McColl, just wonderful getting your insights as always. Thanks so much for joining us today on 2020.
Thanks so much, Neil. All the best to you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.